Good evening. Good evening, Wood Wide Sangha. I love to think of us as that, a Sangha that's connected underground, in the deep understory as well as the overstory. And beautiful to hear Kigaku calling up the clouds, because the old word, unsui, for monks and monkesses who gather together in forest thicket of practice to set the intention and open the heart and mind, are known as cloud and water wanderers, willing, we say, willing to live and die together. So this is an auspicious and also challenging time to be together. Just a brief week ago, and quite a week it's been, yes, in North America at least, with all of the situations unfolding and evolving and emerging in the capital. Last week, violence in the capital. Tonight, a change in impeachment for President Trump, and a change in the word, this gate. And so our deepest offering during this time, for those of us gathered in Ango and peaceful abiding in the winter Ango, is to settle ourselves on ourselves and really let the flower of our life force bloom and come up fresh and vital, and meet the emergency, meet the times that we're living in with a full and open heart and deep, not knowing mind, not knowing a mind that really is willing not to know, and to bear witness, and to find a way to dedicate compassionate service. So very much that is the spirit of this evening's talk. And we've had a wonderful first week of the Ango. For those of us gathered in community, we've been studying an ancient text, the Muman Koan, the gateless barrier, the gateless gate, a text from 1,000 years ago, and yet very, very new stories, family stories of the ancient teachers, still very vivid and electrifying today. So I think when I look at these koans, these 48 stories, and we're going to look at one tonight together, when I look at them, I remember a great admonition from the writer F. Scott Fitzgerald, where he said, "Now, draw your seat close to the precipice, and I'll tell you a story." So these are stories that come out of a tradition of practice, cloud and water wanderers in ancient China, investigating the way and turning the Dharma wheel, not only in one direction, but also backwards. And we say that in the gateless gate, there is no gate. The great way has no gate. There are 1,000 paths. And once you pass the barrier or the threshold, you walk the universe alone. And that's the opening admonition from Muman or Wu-Wen, encouraging us to walk the universe alone, not in a known path, but a different path, right at the edge of the precipice, and listen to the old story and have it be renewed in the experience and unfolding of your practice. And so there are 48 stories, and I've chosen one. Actually, this story chose me from the very first time I opened the Muman Koan as a young student at Tassajara Zen Mountain Center, almost 50 years ago, remembering looking into this book and being caught vividly by Jiaozhou's oak tree at the threshold or in the courtyard. I love to say at the threshold, because so much important work happens at the threshold, at that place in between where the rivers change direction and we cross the Great Divide. Where the rivers change direction and we cross the Great Divide. So we stand at a threshold now as we look into these old stories and see what is to be taught and learned. And right away, when I think of threshold, I immediately go back to the old thresholds, which is a grinding stone, a huge round stone at the doorway between worlds, and the harvest is brought in and threshed or thrashed to pieces, beaten out, so that the kernel of the present moment can emerge and nourish us. The kernel of the seed, the issue, the great heart of the great matter, of what really matters most. So that happens at the threshing place, the threshold between worlds. And an oak tree is often a guardian at the gate. These trees, these great old oaks of antiquity and actually of California. I want you to just see this bowl filled with acorns from black oak. And my husband and I are going to crack them open and grind them into acorn bread, which is really a hippie version of banana bread, but made with acorns and a little honey from the roof of our home and a little spring water from Mount Tamalpais and some ground up corn, all kinds of magic mixed into this oak decoction to serve. And the oak is the primary, the primal, the home food of the native people of this region, known as the native people of California are known as people of the oak, people of the acorn, people of the salmon, and people of abalone. So 3 nations running together: from the ocean, the abalone; from the great forest, the oak; and from the world inside of the world, abalone, oak, and what else did I say? Abalone, oak. Anyway, whatever the third one is, a great feast is being cloud and water wanderers. Keep me on course. So when I think of threshing out the truth, I immediately think of the guardian at the gate and what it means to have a direct relationship with the more than human world. So for me, practicing for many, many years, 25 years, but 40 years of connectedness with Green Gulch Farms and Center, one of the first things I remember coming into the valley was an extraordinary both cypress tree and an oak tree right in the center of the practice place. And while others were heading with great alacrity toward the meditation hall, I was stopped in my tracks by this extraordinary cypress, more than 100 years old, right at the edge of the known world, coming down into Green Gulch. Magnificent cypress tree with a huge canopy stretching into heaven and earth, connecting heaven and earth. And then down just a bit from the cypress tree, a pair of oaks planted in 1950 by a man who came from Texas and worked at Green Gulch and loved the valley and brought acorns from the local community and planted 2 oaks right in the center of the valley, and they grew up as beautiful trees, guardian trees, right near the meditation hall. And so for me, every morning, walking to meditation, I would pass by these oaks. One of the oaks died of a fungus disease about 30 years ago, but a solitary oak stood at the gateway between the meditation hall and the known world. And every morning, heading to Zazen, I would pass by this oak and greet it and feel greeted by it, an accompaniment, a kind of magnificence there, silent guardian at the gate. And coming up from the field after meditation, from working in a farm and growing food, often I'd be so tired I could hardly move, and I would just coming up from the lower fields with the ocean booming in the background, I would see the crown of this oak, that golden crown, and feel heartened and fortified. So I think it's not unusual. This morning, I was very moved to have an interview with a young physician who's in his last year of residency in the San Francisco Bay Area, treating COVID patients. Very, very moved by our conversation and by the work he's doing, and also by the challenges he's facing. And I looked at him screen to screen, but very intimate, and behind him, the huge Sutro forest of San Francisco, the great trees. And I thought to myself, may these trees sustain you, young physician, coming into your new life. May you be strengthened by the teachings and also by the presence of the ancient, of the ancestors. And now more than ever, this connectedness with the more than human world is quite vivid and poignantly vivid. And we're looking at an emergent awareness of what it means to be a human being in context and in connection with the more than human world. So I'm very grateful for these guardians. I want to say just a tiny bit more before dropping into the koan, because to arrive to you, I have to go through that threshold under the canopy of the oak. California Coast Live Oak. Native people never colonized. The wildness never colonized out, never occupied by anything other than the great truth of the oak standing, the character for oak, the original word in Saxon language, jur, meaning doorway or passageway or knowledge place. One with knowledge of the oak was a wizard or a druid, one who knows the oak and also can bear witness. So one who bears witness and is strengthened by the oak is a seer for our time. So this is since ancient times, the forest sage heartened by the oak, and duru, meaning crossing between worlds or doorway between worlds. So the oak is a doorway, and it has patronage, long patronage or matrilineal connection with thunder and lightning. So it's a fierce being at the gate and a wonderful guardian. So I love this oak, as you may be able to tell without me. I should show you and not tell you it. So I'll show you. I love these oaks, and they're so much part of me. I think the complexity and the gnarliness of my hands has come from harvesting acorns, from climbing in trees, from grappling with the great matter in the canopy of trees. So I had a particular love for this oak, and in 1992, a huge windstorm roared through Green Gulch and smashed half the tree down. To protect it, to brace it up, remembering that in Japan, the most venerable trees, the tree that Zhaozhou would have faced, would have been bolstered up if it broke open, was smoked open by storm and wind. So we cabled that tree, and many people at Green Gulch said, you shouldn't do it. It's unnatural. The tree is meant to die. Just let it be. Don't try to keep it alive. It's broken open. And I thought, maybe that's true, but also it's hard to walk by a compromised being every day. It's hard to realize that even the great doorways between worlds crash down and are broken. So it's hard to look at a cabled tree. Still, I was very forceful about protecting that oak and making sure that we didn't tear it down. And then I remember a few years after the cabling, in a night-long practice time, very much like what we're experiencing now at Upaya, we were having a Shuso ceremony, questioning the great matter, bringing up our questions, and a huge wind blew up out of the west and the north, a freezing cold wind, and it was rattling the meditation hall. You could hear branches crashing down. And after the ceremony, we crawled out of the meditation hall. I headed home, and lo and behold, my beloved oak, the beloved oak tree had been smoked open by this storm and lay completely severed on the ground. The tree had fallen into 4 sections, huge sections, all the way to the gate leading into our home, which was very interesting, to hardly get by it. And it was an extraordinary display of grandeur and heartbreaking grandeur. So there's the oak tree in the courtyard for me, smashed open by the storm on a night of questioning the Dharma and bringing forth dragons and elephants, bringing forth true inquiry. The tree lay in state, and to walk by it was excruciating. And no organized Zen student wanted to buck up the tree. So it lay in state in its grandeur for a full week. I'm going to show you another picture. Here's a picture of our 8-year-old daughter. She loved to climb on the tree. I know this is probably driving Kigaku crazy because it's such a funky way to show you, but here's our 8-year-old daughter just leaning on all the branches of the tree. She wanted to sleep out there. She loved the tree so much. And the children played on the tree. And So this may sound like a very sentimental story, but I assure you, this is a love story. And the koans are, in their essence, in their heartmost place, love stories, unabashed love stories, stories of loving the truth so much that you'll never tell the answer, or loving the questions so much that you'll never turn away from always wondering what the great matter is. So for me, the oak is totemic and vivid. So let's drop then into the 37th story. Again, we meet Jiaozhou, he of Mu and the dog, he who is questioned by the old woman. Jiaozhou questions the old woman. Well, I think probably the old woman questions him. There are 5 cases with Jiaozhou at the front and center in the Mumonkan, and they're all vivid. But this one for me is a magnificent one. A monk asked Jiaozhou. Now remember, Jiaozhou, an old master. He lived to be 120 years old. He ordained as an 18-year-old. He found his teacher immediately, unquestionably. He worked with Nansen for 40 years. And when he died, Jiaozhou or Joshu grieved for 3 years. And then he went on anya or pilgrimage, wandering around, searching for a new way to practice. He was 60 years old. And at 80, he found his rugged, rough temple in northern China and settled down in there. It was not a commodious place, but it was a place that matched his essential mind, a great teacher, and with hundreds of students who came to study with him. So Jiaozhou, alone in the Tang Dynasty, holding up the mirror. A monk asked Jiaozhou, what is the meaning of Bodhidharmas coming from the West? And Jiaozhou answered, the oak tree in the courtyard. Or if you're living in Japan in Dogen's time, the cypress tree in the courtyard. And I love that evergreen and deciduous come together and interchange places here, depending on the country where you're living. So one more time, a monk in this ragged, ragtag, poor temple in northern China asked Jiaozhou, what is the meaning of Bodhidharmas coming from the West? Jiaozhou answered, the oak tree in the courtyard. Now, it's Bodhidharma, mythic Bodhidharma, who brought Buddhism from India to China in 400s, or yes, the 5th or 6th century, the blue-eyed barbarian traveling by sea for 3 years, rough water, to make his way to China to study the way. And there's a beautiful story in the Blue Cliff record of Bodhidharma meeting the Emperor Wu of Liang. The first time he met great master Bodhidharma, he asked him, he'd come from India, so he must know. The emperor asked Bodhidharma, what is the highest meaning of the holy truths? And Bodhidharma answered immediately, empty, nothing holy. Well, who is it that's facing me? The emperor asked. I don't know, said Bodhidharma. And then a few hours later, he crossed the Yangtze River to the kingdom of Wei, found a cave, and began practicing meditation for 9 years. So this is a really beautiful early transmission story. The first case, like the Mu case, the first case of the Blue Cliff record, the Hekigan Roko. Empty, nothing holy. I don't know who's facing you. So it's this guy that the monk is asking about when he meets Jiaozhou. What is the meaning of Bodhidharma coming from the West? Now, we know enough from studying these koans that they can't be answered in words. They can't be answered with rational thinking. They can only be met mind to mind, body to body, nature to nature, and true nature to true nature. So the answer, the oak tree in the courtyard, Eiken Roshi, who translated this version of the Mumonkan, says, oh, he gave us a positive answer, but any answer is tricky. Any direct answer is tricky. Remember when we chanted yesterday from the Jewel Mirror Samadhi, Baba Wawa, Is there anything said or not? The meaning is not in words, but it does respond or pivot on the inquiring impulse. One pivotal instant can reveal the mind, but it depends on not relying on words. So there's a paradox or a conundrum right in the question. What is the meaning of the blue-eyed barbarian coming from India to China? What is the meaning? And Jiao says, in a positive way, in a direct way, the oak tree in the courtyard. So how do we approach these questions without turning away or touching too deeply? How does my perception and deep passion for the threshold oak not become sentimental, a kind of sappy story, pun intended, because the oak sap was acrid for a good month. I could see the tree oozing out blood of the world on the land, reminding me I am in the courtyard. I am the blue-eyed barbarian, not just an oak tree. I mean to grapple with you and not be cut up into pieces and pulverized. I mean to encounter you every day, not just the monk encountering the oak tree in the courtyard, but the oak tree encountering us, not just Baijan traveling with he who was a fox for 500 lifetimes, but the fox coming into our meditation to remind us that it's not all as quiet and worked out as it seems, that there is a wild stream that runs against the river, the usual direction of the rivers in these koans. And it depends on each of us to be alive enough and alert enough to be able to work them. So, after I want to go back to Bodhidharma and the emperor, because a long time after Bodhidharma had left, the emperor asked his local teacher in the area, who was that man that I was talking to? And the teacher said, does your majesty not know who this man is? I don't know, said the emperor. The Mahasattva Avalokiteshvara, eminent compassion, transmitting the Buddha mind seal, was in your presence. And the emperor felt huge regret. Let's bring him back, he said. Let's bring him back at all costs. Bring him back. I'm sorry. And the master said, he will never come back. Will never come back into this realm. It doesn't work in that way. And so, Bodhidharma, the blue-eyed barbarian, coming from India to bring the teachings, one of his disciples said to him, please, Master Jiao, don't teach me by referring to outside things. And Jiao answered him, I don't teach you with reference to outside things. And the monk was perplexed and confused. And he said, well, then what is the meaning of Bodhidharma coming from the West? And Jiao answered, the oak tree in the courtyard. So you're not going to have this be solved in an easy way. Later, he was asked, well, does the oak tree have Buddha nature? Yes, of course it does, Jiao answered. Yes, it does. The monk said, well, when does the oak tree attain Buddhahood? Said Jiao, you'll have to wait until the great universe collapses like the oak tree often does. You'll have to wait until the great universe collapses. And the monk, eager and innocent, asks, well, when does the universe collapse? And Jiao says, oh, just wait until the oak tree attains Buddhahood, and then you'll know. So to me, I feel such an upwelling of emotion when I read these stories. They're vivid as vivid as the acrid sap of the tree in its smoked open decimation. The truth and the call is so strong. And, you know, although it was a conundrum, this is, Eiken Roshi reminds us, Jiaozhou answers in a positive way. He answers, gives an answer. What is the meaning? What is the meaning? When you're asked, what is the meaning? You can be given a positive answer. This very mind is Buddha, says Matsu. But in the next moment, in the next case, he'll be willing to say, not mind and not Buddha. So Jiaozhou, when asked, what is the meaning of the great matter? He'll say, positively, the oak tree in the courtyard. But in another moment, if Bodhidharma ever had any meaning, he could never have saved even himself. So no meaning, nothing holy. Empty, nothing holy. Who are you? I don't know. So the negative and the positive, like negative and positive ions, are charged and attracted to each other and holding together. So please consider this. And, you know, over the years, this koan became quite famous, and Jiaozhou was known as the master who taught the oak tree in the courtyard or the cypress tree in the courtyard. And many flocked to, actually after his death, students flocked to his monastery, to his poor monastery in northern China. And his disciple who was there greeted them, and they said, oh, I've come from far away to pay my respects to Master Jiaozhou. Did he not is this the very place where he taught the oak tree in the courtyard? And his primary disciple said, no, it isn't. Well, but didn't he teach about the oak tree in the courtyard? Isn't that his? No, said the master. Said his disciple, no, my master never said a word about any oak tree in any courtyard. No. So positive and negative. We're looking at language that goes beyond positive and negative. And we're looking at a practice, at a call to practice in a time where we have to deeply and fully find our own authentic way without grasping even to beloved plant material, or to grasping to no grasping. That's a particularly insidious kind of grasping toward no grasping. It's kind of grand and ethereal and floaty, and makes you a little bit, as poet Gary Snyder says, too much wisdom, you feel no pain. Too much compassion, you're sappy as the oak tree. Too much wisdom, you feel no pain. You need both to find some kind of balance in these times, to deal directly with these stories. So this is the story that fully called to me and calls to me still. Inter represents a tree, or the alphabet was told in the form of trees. And the old forest comes forward more and more. So if I may, if you will allow me, please, now just to drop down to the next level, kind of at the root system of the oak. I want to say something, I can find my notes. I want to say something about the underworld that runs at the root system of the great beings that manifest above land and shelter and protect us. I want to say something about the underworld and the understory, the story that's under every story, and the connectedness, the ecological awareness, or the true understanding that everything leans on everything else. Every being in the 10 directions is made of all that is. And this is not philosophy or girly talk. This is what some of the scientists say, particularly to women botanists and biologists, who are opening the life story of the understory, the life between the forest floor and the canopy. So can we now in these times, really drop down to the understory and listen to the old story, not always overland, but understory and underland. Can we go underland down to the place where roots penetrate? You know, each root, as it moves into the soil, has at its tip a rough shield, so that when roots push into rocky soil, that shield breaks and a lubricant is released so that the roots can continue pressing down and be in full interaction with the entangled. And I began our talk tonight with a reference to the wood wide web of mutualism and interdependent life, an ancient interdependence that's 450 million years old at least, and the fungal kingdom of the gray in the underworld comes forward, penetrating and interacting in a mycorrhizal relationship, a living bridge, a fungus bridge with the great beings, great forest beings. And here we are, a forest thicket, individual species, but practicing together in an intertwined root system. Now, I am not speaking metaphorically. This is my genuine, experience of living practice, of dangerous practice, of practicing secretly, working within, like an idiot and like a fool in these times, taking up these old stories. At the edge of the precipice, I hear and feel the call of the underworld pulling and reminding us it's a bigger story than the story you think you know. And the fungal kingdom, a forest thicket of arborescent cooperation and connection. And in the canopy, you know, when you look up into the great upper canopy of trees, and you can really see this in oak trees. If you look, you'll notice that the outermost fringes of the trees, each tree, there's a space which is known as the space of crown shyness. This is actually a technical term, the space of crown shyness, where each leaf allows enough room and singularity for the sky to come in. So that the leaves at the very top of trees are interacting at all times with heaven and earth, and bringing that awareness down through the trunk of the tree and releasing it into the living earth. So Professor Susan Simard is a real heroine of mine and a professor of forest ecology in Nelson, British Columbia. And she noticed in her walk through the forests that when new Douglas fir trees were planted on old land that had been cleared, and paper barch trees, their usual companions, were removed, the trees did not thrive. And so she thought, why? They should have a perfect new world to grow in. And she began to analyze the DNA, the descendants and ancestors, we jokingly say, great code for DNA. So the descendants and ancestors present at the root tips of the roots. And she noticed she could trace the movement of molecules through fungal threads, linking every tree in the forest. So when the paper birch were removed, so that technically the new Douglas fir, or the industrial forest of Douglas fir, growing solo, would have enough room to grow well, they did not thrive because their companions were not there. And so that linkage was broken in the organic movement. We have one motto, which is keep the links alive. So keep the links alive. The oak tree in the forest includes an underground network that is as complex and multifaceted and branching as the canopy of the tree. As above, so below. So in that signals, growth hormones, in subterranean circuits. And on the brink of death, a tree, believe it or not, bequeaths its reserves to other members of the forest. And so when a tree is endangered or hurt, it begins to release all of its stores of value to other trees in the forest, so continuity can be preserved. So this is the world we're living in. Oh, good, I have a little bit more time. Am I right, Kigaku? Looking at the clock.
Yes, Wendy, eight minutes about.
Oh, good. Here we go. So let's keep going down into that fungal network. So Professor Susan Zimmer, and I think of her as a cloud and water wanderer in the forest, a forest being. She's an extraordinary scientist, and I want to stand strong in commending her science, which is impeccable. She was so curious about this exchange of nutrients and the wood wide web underneath in the understory of the forest that she began to do experiments. She took radioactive compounds and she sprayed them on a fir tree and covered the tree with a bag. And then she put healthy compounds, carbon-rich compounds on the birch trees nearby. And as the fir tree began to die, the birch tree exchanged its carbon, passed carbon through the fungal network to the expiring fir tree. How do we know this? Because she lifted up the fir tree and ground it up to see what would happen in the wood and analyze the wood. And lo and behold, without any direct experience or direct connection with carbon, the carbon was present in the fir tree, and radioactivity was present in the birch. So the birch received some radioactivity from compounds from the fir and responded by exchanging. So there's a huge compassionate network. I don't want to be anthropocentric, but anyway. And 40% of the nitrogen from the air and 50% of the water of the world is stored in the roots and exchanged as we're sitting here on a wooden floor in this beautiful meditation hall, held up by the great trees of the Lincoln Forest, by the ponderosa pine, the standing dead, they're called. Look, audience, at these extraordinary beams of this meditation hall, holding up this incredible room and the wooden floor. So the wood wide web is holding you up as you sit this evening and consider the great matter coming and going, why the ancestors came, what they're turning when they look. 425 to 600 million years old, land being colonized by plants, forests suffusing the air with water vapor, and the cool earth being opened and penetrated by a mycorrhizal network that is more complex and dense than we can imagine. The 400 to 120,000 gigatons of carbon are stored in living soils, and they're anchored by the symbiotic underground web of this fungal network. So when Zhao Zhou is asked, what is the meaning of Bodhidharma coming to the West to teach? Of course he would answer from the point of view of the understory and a canopy that touches heaven but doesn't penetrate it, touches it softly so that light can come in and dark can go back. So stars can be caught in the branches of oaks and carried down through rain and wind and weather to the root system of the more than human world, the fungal network. What is a fungus really? It's made of so many different beings penetrating the roots, carrying nutrients, and it also is pretty opportunistic. Fungi are not only nice guys helping everybody, but they have a strong life force able to take in the radioactivity from Chernobyl in the forests that are most deeply maintained in an organic way, particularly in Austria, where biodynamic agriculture is practiced vividly and the fungal network is extremely active. The radioactivity from Chernobyl was not detected traveling over with Geiger counters. It was absorbed, dissolved, and reincorporated by the wood wide web underneath the ground. So please, when you take up a koan, let it take you up. Let it really penetrate you. Don't ever apologize for anything fundamental. It comes from fundus, the tushy, the anus, upon which you are sitting on a wooden floor, taking up the truth of these times. It's a bigger, wider, wilder story than we can imagine. And it is our story to make true and to turn again and to find what is the emergent truth of answering this koan now. How do we take in the story and have it nourish and hold us? And an answer, the wood wide web is the answer. Please say, if anyone asks you, did she talk about the wood wide web? Say, absolutely not. Not, oh, what are you talking about? No, she wasn't talking about that. We're not talking about conventional reality. There isn't time. We're in too dangerous and consequential a time right now. Therefore, against all imaginations, we come together to practice. Practicing medicine, teaching, taking care of children. Many members of our community are dealing directly with loss from the COVID epidemic and also from cancer. There are many who are carrying the truth of grievous loss. I know for me, a very close friend died on the 26th of December, an amazing human being, an organic farmer who's actually given his body to a composting system. And in 30 days, his name was Amigo Bob. In 30 days, we will receive a cubic yard of composted Amigo Bob Cantasano to be returned to the forest and to plant into the forest. And yet, we don't cling to this. We don't claim it because it's a great mystery. That place where rivers change direction and we cross the great divide, cross the threshold, check our confusion at the gate, stand completely open-hearted, ready to meet the blue-eyed barbarian, wall-gazing in Shaolin Temple across the centuries. Meet him fresh, and don't ask him to stay. So thank you. Thank you for this evening. Thank you, Roshi Joan, particularly, deeply and fully, for the opportunity to somewhat hold in abeyance my proclaimed allergy to koans and to find, oh my Lord, these are vivid, dangerous precipice stories. They're taking us into the underworld, taking me into the underworld, and I'm deeply grateful for that during this time and for the dedicated practice of each of you today, Cloud and Water Wanderers coming together. Particularly deep happy birthday to beloved Martha, who's joining us from Northern California, overlooking the ocean. This is your day of birth. So great love to you for your years of practice and founding the San Francisco Zen Center Hospice with Frank Ostaseski. We adore you and treasure you. Thank you for your life force. You're nice and young now, Martha, in your 80s. You can go around and make it to 120 and keep causing trouble lifetime after lifetime. So gratitude with my full heart for our practice and for this opportunity to address you tonight from the Circle of the Way Temple, continuous practice, lifetime after lifetime. Thank you very much.
Oh, Wendy, I'm smiling from ear to ear. My face aches. I've been absolutely grinning for 45 minutes. Thank you, dear. The world
Heart.
would web. Oh, Wendy. Well, in praise of fungus.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Wendy. We'll end with the 4 vows. Creations are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to transform them. Reality is boundless. I vow to perceive it. The awakened ways unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. Creations are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to transform them. Reality is boundless. I vow to perceive it. The awakened ways unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. Creations are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to transform them. Reality is boundless. I vow to perceive it. The awakened ways unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you in the Zendo at 7:45. Thank you so much, Sensei Wendy. Beautiful.